The sky above New York City turned black at exactly 3:47 in the afternoon. It was not clouds. It was not an eclipse. It was something far worse. Jack stood on the rooftop of the United Earth Defense Headquarters and watched as massive shapes descended through the atmosphere. The ships were enormous, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. They moved slowly, deliberately, like predators who knew their prey could not escape. "Get me a count," Jack said to his communications officer. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. "Sir, we're tracking over 4,000 vessels entering Earth's atmosphere. They're positioning themselves over every major population center on the planet." Jack had spent 30 years in the military. He had fought in 3 wars. He had seen death and destruction, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was terrifying. The first message came exactly 1 hour after the ships appeared. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, simultaneously. Species 7841, designated human. You have been evaluated by the collective. Your technological development is insufficient for membership. Your biological specifications meet labor requirements. You are hereby classified as labor-grade sentience. All resistance is inefficient and will be punished. Compliance is mandatory. Jack listened to the message 3 times. Each time the words felt more unreal. Labor-grade sentience. They were calling humanity slaves. The response from Earth's governments was immediate. Every nuclear weapon on the planet was launched within the first 6 hours. Jack watched the missiles streak upward toward the alien vessels. For a brief moment, he felt hope. The hope died quickly. The missiles detonated against invisible barriers surrounding each ship. The explosions were bright and violent, but they did nothing. The shields absorbed everything. Then the aliens responded. Beams of blue light shot down from the ships. Wherever they touched, things simply stopped existing. Military bases vanished. Aircraft carriers disappeared. Entire army divisions were erased in seconds. The aliens were not fighting a war. They were conducting pest control. Lisa Grant was eating lunch in her small apartment in Chicago when the attack began. She was 26 years old, an engineer at a technology company. She had a brother named who lived 3 blocks away. She had parents in Florida. She had a life, dreams, and plans for the future. All of that ended in a single afternoon. The building next to hers collapsed when a beam struck it. Lisa ran into the street and found chaos. People were screaming, running in every direction. Cars crashed into each other. Smoke filled the air. Lisa, she heard her brother's voice and turned, was pushing through the crowd toward her. He grabbed her hand. "We have to get out of the city. We have to run." They ran for 3 days. They hid in abandoned buildings during the day and moved at night. They watched as alien ground troops marched through the streets, rounding up survivors. The soldiers were tall, covered in gray armor, with faces hidden behind helmets. They moved with mechanical precision. On the 4th day, they were caught. Lisa remembered the moment clearly. A bright light shone in her eyes. Strong hands grabbed her arms. She heard shouting, fighting. Then there was a sharp pain in her neck and everything went dark. She woke up in a metal room with no windows. There were hundreds of other humans packed around her. Some were crying. Some were silent, staring at nothing. The air smelled of sweat and fear. A voice spoke from hidden speakers. "You will be transported to your assigned work facility. Resistance will result in punishment. Compliance will be rewarded with continued existence." Lisa touched the back of her neck and felt something hard under her skin. A small device had been implanted there. She would later learn it was a neural compliance chip. If she disobeyed, it would cause pain beyond anything she could imagine. She never saw again. Across the planet, the same scene repeated billions of times. Humans were rounded up like cattle. Families were separated. Children were torn from their parents' arms. The old and sick who could not work were simply killed. Jack was captured during the final assault on the defense headquarters. He had fought until his ammunition ran out, then fought with his fists until they knocked him unconscious. When he woke up, he was on a ship heading away from Earth. Through a small window, he watched his home planet grow smaller and smaller. The blue and green world that had given birth to humanity was now covered in smoke and fire. The aliens had won in less than a week. The transport ship was crowded and cold. Jack found himself sitting next to a woman with empty eyes. She had been a teacher, she told him. Her entire class had been taken. She did not know where they were now. "Where are they taking us?" someone asked. No one answered, no one knew. The journey took several weeks. During that time, Jack learned pieces of information from other prisoners. The collective was an alliance of 12 alien species. They had ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. They had enslaved hundreds of species before humanity. To them, humans were nothing special, just another resource to be exploited. When the ship finally stopped, the prisoners were unloaded onto a world with 2 suns and purple soil. The air was thin and smelled wrong. Armed guards directed them toward massive industrial buildings in the distance. Jack walked in line with the others. His body moved forward, but his mind was somewhere else. He was thinking about Earth, about everyone he had lost, about the world that had been stolen from him. The guard nearest to him had a weapon that looked like a rifle but glowed with strange energy. The guard was not paying attention. Jack could see an opening. He could grab the weapon, fight back, die on his feet like a soldier. But then he saw something that stopped him. A young woman walked beside him, barely more than a girl. She was watching him with wide, frightened eyes. If he acted now, she would die too. They all would. Jack made a decision. He would not die today. He would survive. He would wait. And one day, somehow, he would find a way to make the aliens pay for what they had done. He did not know it then, but millions of other humans were making the same silent promise at that very moment. They believed they had conquered humanity. They believed they had broken the human spirit. They had made the worst mistake of their existence. 15 years had passed since the fall of Earth. They believed that humans had been completely broken. They were wrong. Sam Porter swung his mining pick into the rock face for the 10,000th time that day. His arms burned. His back ached. The thin air of IV made every breath feel like fire in his lungs. But he did not stop. Stopping meant punishment, and punishment meant the chip in his neck would activate. He had experienced that pain only once in his first week as a slave. He had talked back to a guard. The pain that followed was beyond description. It felt like every nerve in his body was being torn apart at the same time. He had screamed until his voice gave out. He had promised himself he would never feel that pain again. But promises made in fear are easy to break when anger burns hot enough. Sam had been a Marine sergeant before the invasion. He had served 2 tours of duty. He had been trained to survive, to fight, to never give up. They had taken everything from him, but they could not take who he was. In the darkness of the mines, Sam had found others like him. There was old Pete, who had been an army captain. There was Maria, who had been a police officer. There was young Danny, who had only been 12 when the aliens came but had grown into a strong man with hatred in his eyes. They met in the deepest tunnels where the guards rarely went. They spoke in whispers. They made plans that seemed impossible, and slowly, carefully, they built a network. The network spread through the mining facility like roots through soil. Workers passed messages during shift changes. Symbols were scratched into walls that only humans understood. Trust was built one conversation at a time. But planning a rebellion without weapons or hope was meaningless. They needed something more. They needed a miracle. That miracle came in the form of Lisa Grant. Lisa had been moved to IV 3 years after her capture. She worked in the manufacturing section, assembling parts for machines she did not understand. The work was easier than mining, but the hours were longer. She barely slept. She barely ate, but her mind never stopped working. Lisa had always been curious. Even as a child, she had taken apart every device in her house just to see how it worked. That curiosity had made her an engineer. Now, as a slave, it became her weapon. She studied everything. She watched how the alien technology operated. She memorized the patterns of the guards. She collected small pieces of discarded equipment and hid them under her sleeping mat. One night, while examining a broken monitoring device, she discovered something incredible. The neural compliance chips operated on a specific frequency. If that frequency was disrupted, the chips would shut down temporarily. Her heart pounded as she realized what this meant. Without the chips, humans could fight back. Without the pain, they could resist. Lisa needed help. She needed people who knew how to fight. She had heard rumors of a man in the mining section who was organizing workers, a former soldier named Sam Porter. Getting a message to him was dangerous. They had informants everywhere, humans who had traded their dignity for slightly better food or warmer sleeping quarters. But Lisa had learned patience during her years of captivity. She found a worker who moved between sections. She gave him a simple message, written in a code that only humans would understand. Then she waited. 3 weeks later, she met Sam Porter in an abandoned storage room deep in the facility. He was older than she expected, with gray in his beard and scars on his hands, but his eyes were sharp and alive. He studied her carefully before speaking. "You're the engineer," he said, "the one who figured out the chips." Lisa nodded. She was nervous, but she did not show it. "I can build a device that will disable them, but I need materials, I need time, and I need protection." Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was the first real smile Lisa had seen in years. "Lady, you just gave us hope. We'll get you whatever you need." The months that followed were the most difficult of Lisa's life. She worked her normal shifts during the day and built the device at night. Sam's network protected her, creating distractions when guards came too close, smuggling components from other parts of the facility. The device was small, no bigger than her fist. It was ugly, built from scraps and held together with stolen wire. But when Lisa tested it on her own chip, she felt nothing. No pain, no control. For 5 glorious minutes, she was free. She cried. She had not cried in years, but now tears streamed down her face. It worked. It actually worked. Sam gathered the leaders of the network for a final meeting. There were 20 of them, men and women who had kept their fire alive through 15 years of suffering. They looked at Lisa's device with wonder in their eyes. "Tomorrow night," Sam said, "during the shift change when the guards are distracted, Lisa will activate the device. The chips will go down, and we will take this facility." No one spoke. Everyone understood what this meant. If they failed, they would all die. They did not tolerate rebellion. But if they succeeded, everything would change. Old Pete stood up slowly. His bones creaked with age and hard labor. "I've been waiting 15 years for this moment," he said. "I'm ready to die free." One by one, the others stood. They clasped hands. They made promises. And when the meeting ended, they walked back to their quarters knowing that tomorrow would bring either freedom or death. The next night, at exactly midnight, Lisa activated her device. Throughout the facility, 3,000 neural chips went silent. 3,000 humans felt the control disappear from their minds. 3,000 slaves remembered that they had once been free. And then the screaming began. Not screams of pain this time. Screams of rage. 15 years of suffering, 15 years of humiliation, 15 years of watching friends die and families be torn apart. All of it came pouring out in a single moment of fury. The guards never stood a chance. Sam led the charge on the armory. The alien weapons were strange, but humans learned quickly. By dawn, the facility was theirs. The flag had been torn down. Human workers stood in the courtyard, blinking in the light of the two suns, hardly believing what they had done. Sam climbed onto a platform so everyone could see him. He held a captured alien rifle above his head. "They called us labor-grade sentients," he shouted. "They called us slaves. Tonight we showed them what humans really are, and this is just the beginning. We will free every human in this galaxy. We will take back our home. We will make them pay for every life they stole, every family they destroyed, every tear we have shed." The crowd roared. The sound echoed off the metal walls and rose into the purple sky. On dozens of other worlds, humans heard the news through secret channels. The rebellion had begun. The impossible had happened. And everywhere, slaves who had lost all hope began to believe again. The had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had never known defeat. They had never known fear. They were about to learn both. The rebellion spread like fire through dry grass. Within 18 months, humans had risen up on 37 worlds. Mining colonies, manufacturing plants, agricultural stations, all of them fell to human fury. They tried to stop it. They sent troops, increased security, executed prisoners publicly to create fear. Nothing worked. Admiral Kate stood on the bridge of the Defiance, a cruiser that had been captured during the uprising on Nexus Station. The ship had been built to carry slaves. Now it carried warriors. Kate was 52 years old. Before the invasion, she had been a captain in the United States Navy. The had recognized her tactical knowledge and assigned her to work in their war planning department. They had thought they could use her expertise. Instead, she had spent 15 years memorizing every detail of their military, their strategies, their weaknesses. Now she was using that knowledge to destroy them. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from the Delta Sector," her communications officer said. A young man named Chris, who had been born in captivity and had never seen Earth. "3 more facilities have been liberated. The enemy fleet is pulling back to defensive positions." Kate nodded. Everything was proceeding according to plan. They fought wars the same way they did everything else, with rigid rules and mathematical precision. They calculated force ratios and probability percentages. They followed doctrine written thousands of years ago. Humans did not fight that way. Humans were unpredictable. They took risks that seemed insane. They sacrificed themselves for strangers. They found victory in situations where victory should have been impossible. They had never faced an enemy like humanity. Lisa Grant had become one of the most important figures in the rebellion. Her device for disabling neural chips had been and improved. Now, every uprising began the same way. The chips went dead and the humans went wild. But Lisa had not stopped there. She had assembled a team of engineers and scientists, all former slaves, and together they were taking apart technology piece by piece. They learned how the energy shields worked. They discovered the principles behind their faster-than-light travel. They reverse-engineered their weapons. And then they started making improvements. The first human-designed warship was completed 9 months after the rebellion began. It was smaller than vessels, but faster and more agile. Its weapons hit harder. Its shields were more efficient. Human engineers had taken alien technology and made it better. They could not understand how this was happening. Humans were labor-grade sentients. They were supposed to be simple creatures, good for manual work but incapable of true intelligence. That was what the classification said. That was what they had believed for 15 years. They had been catastrophically wrong. High Arbiter sat in his throne room on the home world and listened to reports of defeat after defeat. His advisors assured him the rebellion would collapse, resources would run out, internal divisions would tear the humans apart. It was only a matter of time. But time kept passing, and the humans kept winning. The Battle of Nexus Station was the turning point. Nexus was a massive space station that served as the primary trading hub for the entire sector. Thousands of ships passed through it every day. Whoever controlled Nexus controlled the economy of 100 star systems. Kate led a fleet of 47 ships against a force of over 150 vessels. By every calculation, she should have lost. The enemy had more ships, more firepower, more experience. But Kate had something they did not have. She had human creativity. The battle began normally. The two fleets approached each other, weapons fired, shields flashed, ships exploded. The commander was confident, his forces were superior, the mathematics were clear. Then Kate gave an order that no could have predicted. All ships cut engines, drift pattern alpha. Her fleet went dark. Ships that had been fighting moments ago suddenly appeared dead, drifting lifelessly in space. The commander was confused. Was this surrender? A malfunction? He ordered his forces to move in for the kill. That was his mistake. As the enemy fleet closed in, Kate's ships suddenly came alive. They had drifted into perfect positions, surrounding the flagship. Every weapon fired at once, concentrating all their power on a single point in the flagship's shields. The shields held for 3 seconds. Then they collapsed. The flagship broke apart in a massive explosion that destroyed 5 other vessels nearby. Chaos erupted in the fleet. Without their flagship, without their commander, they had no idea what to do. Their doctrine did not cover this situation. Their calculations had not predicted this outcome. Kate's voice came over all channels. All ships execute attack pattern Omega, show no mercy. The human fleet tore through the confused enemy like wolves through sheep. Ships that tried to flee were hunted down. Ships that tried to fight were overwhelmed. In 4 hours, the battle was over. 93 vessels had been destroyed or captured. Kate had lost only 12 ships. Nexus Station fell the next day. Human forces stormed through its corridors, liberating slaves and capturing supplies. The station's massive communications array was used to broadcast a message across the entire sector. Kate appeared on screens in every home, every ship, every facility in space. I am Admiral Kate of the Human Liberation Fleet. 15 years ago, you took our world. You stole our families, you made us slaves. You believed we were nothing. You were wrong. We are humanity and we are coming. Every human still in chains will be freed. Every crime you committed will be answered. This is not a threat. This is a promise. The broadcast ended, but its effects were just beginning. On occupied worlds, human slaves heard the message and took hope. On alien worlds, citizens heard it and felt fear. They had always been the hunters. Now they were becoming the prey. Sam Porter watched the broadcast from a transport ship heading to reinforce the front lines. He was older now, with more gray in his hair and more scars on his body. The rebellion had cost him greatly. Many friends had died. Many battles had left wounds that would never fully heal. But when he saw Kate's face on the screen, when he heard her words echoing through space, he smiled. "It's really happening," he said to himself. "We're really going to win." Beside him, young soldiers who had never known freedom checked their weapons and dreamed of seeing Earth. The world their parents had described in whispered stories. The world they had stolen. Soon they would take it back. High Arbiter called an emergency meeting of the Collective Council. For the first time in his 400 years of rule, there was fear in his voice. "We must increase our forces. We must crush this rebellion before it spreads further." But the other species in the collective were already having doubts. They had joined the alliance for profit and protection. Now that protection was failing. Some began to wonder if supporting the was worth the cost. The cracks were forming. The empire was starting to crumble. And somewhere in space, a fleet of human ships was heading home, toward a blue and green world that had been waiting 15 years for its children to return. The tide had turned. The impossible was becoming real, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Liberation Fleet gathered at the edge of the solar system. 217 ships floated in the darkness, their running lights glowing like stars. Inside each vessel, humans prepared for the most important battle of the war. They were going home. Ben Torres sat in the cockpit of his fighter craft and stared at the distant sun. That was his son, the same sun that had warmed his face when he was a child playing in his backyard in Arizona, the same sun he had watched rise on his wedding day, the same sun that had disappeared behind alien ships when his world ended. He had lost everything during the invasion: his wife Maria, his two daughters Sophia and Emma, his parents, his friends. Everyone he loved had been taken, scattered across the galaxy, probably dead now. The grief had nearly destroyed him in the early years. Only the burning need for revenge had kept him going. Now he was leading the Vanguard Squadron. He would be the first human to enter Earth's orbit in 17 years. "All pilots, this is Admiral." Kate's voice came through the communications system. "In a few hours we will engage the enemy at Earth. This will be the hardest fight of our lives. They know what Earth means to us. They have fortified it heavily. We will face everything they have." Ben listened carefully. Around him, other pilots did the same. "Many of us will not survive this battle. I will not lie to you about that, but I need you to understand something. What we do today matters, not just for us but for every human who was ever told they were nothing, for every child who grew up in chains, for every mother who watched her family be torn apart. Today, we take back our home. Today, we show the galaxy that humanity will not be broken." Kate paused. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "I have served with you for 3 years. I have watched you fight and bleed and sacrifice. You have made me proud to be human. Now let's go home." The fleet jumped to hyperspace. When they emerged near Earth, Ben felt his breath catch in his throat. The planet hung before them, beautiful and blue, just as he remembered from pictures. But it was also wrong. Massive structures covered the continents. Mining operations had the surface. They had been stripping his home for resources. Rage burned in his chest, cold and sharp. Then the enemy fleet appeared. They had assembled their largest force in history. 300 warships surrounded Earth, protecting their prize. They knew the humans were coming. They had prepared. "All ships engage," Kate ordered. The battle began with a fury that shook space itself. Energy beams crossed between vessels. Missiles exploded against shields. Ships rammed each other in desperate collisions. In his fighter, Ben dodged and weaved through the chaos, destroying enemy craft one after another. The fighting lasted 3 days. On the second day, Sam Porter led ground assault teams to the surface, punched through the atmosphere while orbital battles raged above. They landed near what had once been Geneva, where they had built their central command structure. Lisa Grant was with them. She had insisted on coming even though she was not a soldier. Earth was her home too. She had a right to fight for it. The ground battle was brutal. They had thousands of troops defending the command center. They had heavy weapons, armored vehicles, defensive shields. The human forces were outnumbered but they fought anyway. Sam moved through the streets of the ruined city, memories flooding his mind. He had visited Geneva once, long ago, before the invasion. It had been beautiful then. Now it was a nightmare of alien architecture and human bones. "Push forward," he shouted to his troops. "Do not stop, do not give them time to regroup." The fighting was hand-to-hand in some places. Humans used captured weapons, improvised explosives, even their bare fists. They died by the dozens, but they kept advancing. Nothing could stop them. Nothing could break their determination. Sam reached the outer wall of the command center with 50 soldiers remaining. The facility was massive, protected by energy shields that blocked all attacks. Without those shields down, they could not get inside. Lisa ran up beside him, breathing hard. "The shield generator is in the North Tower. If we can reach it, I can shut it down." Sam looked at the tower. It was heavily guarded. Getting there would be almost impossible. "Then that's where we're going," he said. They fought their way through the streets, losing more people with every block. Enemy fire came from every direction. Friends fell beside Sam, their names adding to the long list of those he would mourn later, if there was a later. They reached the tower with only 12 people left. Sam kicked open the door and led the charge inside. The fighting was close and vicious. Alien soldiers were everywhere. Sam took a wound to his shoulder but kept fighting. He took another to his leg but refused to fall. They reached the generator room. Lisa ran to the control panel and began working. The remaining soldiers formed a protective circle around her, firing at enemies who kept coming through the doors. "How long?" Sam shouted. 2 minutes. They did not have 2 minutes. More enemies were pouring in. The soldiers were falling one by one. Soon there would be no one left. Sam made his decision. He grabbed a bundle of explosive charges from his belt. He had been carrying them for situations exactly like this. He looked at Lisa. "Get it done," he said, "and then run." Before she could respond, he charged toward the enemy. He was screaming, firing his weapon, drawing all their attention. They turned to focus on him, exactly as he wanted. He detonated the charges when he reached their center. The explosion killed Sam and 30 alien soldiers. It also created a gap in the enemy line, giving Lisa the time she needed. Her fingers flew across the controls. Warning lights flashed. Systems powered down. And outside, the energy shield surrounding the command center flickered and died. "The shield is down," Kate's voice came over the radio from orbit. "All ground forces storm the command center. Go, go, go." Human troops poured through the broken defenses. The fighting inside was fierce, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Room by room, floor by floor, they took back the building. The commander surrendered at sunset on the third day. He knelt before Kate as she walked through the ruined halls of what had been humanity's greatest city. "You have won this battle," he said, "but the collective will send more forces. You cannot hold this world." Kate looked at him with cold eyes. "Watch us." That night, Kate walked through the ruins alone. She found a hill overlooking the city and stood there as the sun set. The sky turned orange and red, colors she had not seen in 17 years. She thought about Sam Porter, who had given his life to bring down the shield. She thought about all the others who had died. She thought about the billions of humans still scattered across the galaxy, still waiting to be freed. The battle for Earth was won, but the war was not over. She raised her communicator. "This is Admiral to all human forces across the galaxy. Earth is free. Our home belongs to us again, but we are not finished. Every human who remains in chains must be liberated, and those who chained us must answer for their crimes. Rest tonight. Mourn our dead. But tomorrow we continue. Tomorrow we bring our wrath to those who thought they could enslave humanity." Across the galaxy, humans heard her words. Some cried, some cheered. All of them understood what came next. The liberation of Earth was just the beginning. Revenge would be the end. The message from the collective arrived 1 month after Earth was liberated. High Arbiter himself appeared on the screen, his gray face trying to show dignity even as his empire crumbled. "Humans," he said, "the collective offers peace. You may keep your world and your colonies. We will release all human slaves. In exchange, you will end this war. We can coexist. There is no need for further bloodshed." Admiral Kate watched the message alone in her quarters. She played it 3 times. She considered the offer carefully. Peace, freedom, the chance to rebuild. It was everything humanity had fought for. Then she thought about the mining colonies where humans had worked until their bodies broke. She thought about the families torn apart. She thought about the children born in chains who never knew anything else. She thought about Sam Porter dying in fire so they could take back their home. She recorded her response. "High Arbiter, for 20 years your collective treated humanity as animals. You sold us. You beat us. You worked us to death in your mines and factories. When we cried for mercy, you laughed. When we begged for our families, you ignored us. And now, when we finally stand as equals, you offer peace." Kate's eyes were cold as ice. "No, we do not want your peace. We want justice. Every species that participated in our enslavement will answer for their crimes. Every world that profited from our suffering will pay the price. You asked if we could coexist. The answer is simple. We cannot. Not until the debt is paid." The message ended. The war continued. The human fleet, now called the Retribution Fleet, had grown to over 500 ships. Factories on Earth and liberated colonies worked day and night to produce more. Dr. Blake, the brilliant physicist who had spent 10 years as a slave, led the weapons development program. His team created things the galaxy had never seen. The quantum disruptor was the most terrifying. It destabilized matter at the atomic level. Ships hit by it simply came apart, their atoms scattering into space. They called it a war crime. Humans called it justice. The campaign began with the species who had been to human slaves. They were first. They had run the mining operations where conditions were so brutal that the average human survival time was 3 years. Their home world had 4 moons. By the end of the first day, it had none. Human weapons shattered them, sending debris raining down on the planet below. Kate gave them one chance to surrender. They refused, trusting their orbital defenses to protect them. The orbital defenses lasted 6 hours. When human soldiers landed, they found cities burning. Civilians ran screaming through the streets. For the first time in their long history, they understood fear. The human troops were efficient and brutal. Military targets were destroyed completely. Government buildings were leveled. The leadership that had ordered human suffering was hunted down and executed. Kate watched the reports come in, feeling nothing. Some humans argued for mercy. They said revenge would make humanity no better than the. Kate listened to their arguments. She understood their perspective. But she also remembered. She remembered the transport ships packed with terrified humans. She remembered the screams when families were separated. She remembered the neural chips that turned disobedience into agony. She remembered working 18 hours a day while alien masters watched with bored eyes. Mercy had not saved humanity. Wrath would avenge them. One by one, the species of the collective fell. They who had bred humans for hard labor like animals. They who had used human organs for medical experiments. They who had kept human children as pets and entertainment. Each world burned. Each civilization that had participated in human slavery paid the ultimate price. Not all were destroyed. They had secretly helped humans during the occupation, smuggling food and medicine to slave camps. They had refused to participate in the slave trade. These species were spared. Some were even offered partnership. Humanity remembered who had shown kindness. They also remembered who had shown cruelty. Ben Torres led the attack on the home world. He had survived the battle for Earth and dozens of battles since. He had become one of the most decorated pilots in the fleet, but the decorations meant nothing to him. Only one thing mattered. They had to pay. Their home world was beautiful, covered in ancient cities that had stood for millions of years. Monuments to their greatness filled every space. They believed themselves the masters of creation, the most advanced species in existence. Ben watched those monuments fall. The battle for the home world lasted 2 weeks. It was the most brutal fighting of the entire war. They threw everything they had at the human fleet. They fought with desperation, knowing that defeat meant extinction. But humanity's anger was stronger than their desperation. When the last warship was destroyed, when the last orbital defense was silenced, Kate descended to the planet's surface. She walked through streets filled with rubble and smoke. Alien civilians watched her pass, terror in their eyes. She found High Arbiter in his throne room. He was old, older than any human could imagine. He had ruled for 400 years. He had enslaved 1,000 species. He had believed himself immortal. Now he knelt before a human. "We underestimated you," he said. His voice was tired, broken. "We saw you as primitives, as tools to be used. We never imagined." "No," Kate interrupted. "You never did. You looked at us and saw weakness because that is what you wanted to see. You never understood what humans are capable of when you take everything from them." She raised her weapon. "Any last words?" Looked up at her. For a moment, something like respect flickered in his ancient eyes. "Make it quick." The shot echoed through the empty throne room. The war ended 3 months later. The collective, which had ruled for 3,000 years, no longer existed. Some of its member species had been completely destroyed. Others had been reduced to small populations on single worlds, stripped of technology and weapons. They would never threaten anyone again. Humanity stood as the dominant power in the sector. The species that had once called them slaves now treated them with fear and respect. Human ships patrolled the space lanes. Human ambassadors negotiated treaties. Human soldiers kept the peace. On Earth, the rebuilding began. Cities rose from the ruins. Children played in parks that had once been battlefields. A new generation was being born, one that would never know chains. Lisa Grant became the chief scientist of the new human government. She dedicated her life to ensuring that humanity would never be vulnerable again. Under her leadership, human technology advanced at incredible speed. Kate retired from the military and wrote her memoirs. She told the full story of the rebellion, from the darkest days of slavery to the final victory. The book became required reading for every human child. Ben Torres became the first human to explore beyond the former territory. He took a small ship and disappeared into unknown space, searching for whatever lay beyond. Some said he was looking for peace. Others said he was looking for more enemies to fight. But perhaps the most important monument was built on IV, on the spot where Sam Porter had first organized the rebellion. A simple stone pillar rose from the purple soil, bearing a single message. Here began the liberation of humanity. We were slaves. We became warriors. We will never be slaves again. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it. Humans made pilgrimages there, bringing their children to touch the stone and remember. Even aliens came, wanting to understand how a labor-grade species had destroyed the greatest empire in history. The answer was simple. They had made the same mistake that every tyrant eventually makes. They had assumed that power meant control. They had believed that breaking bodies meant breaking spirits. They had forgotten that humans were never truly tamed. They were only waiting. And when the time came, when the chains finally broke, the galaxy learned a lesson it would never forget. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not slaves. Humanity was wrath given form. And the universe would remember their fury for 1,000,000 years.